Leadership Award presented by the California Legislative Black Caucus. He continues to be actively involved in the community and sits on the board of the Music Center, the African American Board Leadership Institute, and Junior Achievement, just to name a few. He's also the finance chair previously and treasurer of the Los Angeles chapter of the Urban League. Daryl has dedicated much of his time to the youth in our community and works unceasingly to assist in providing brighter possibilities for their future. So as you can tell from their backgrounds, we have two heavy hitters in their respective fields. There's a lot to unpack, so let's dive in. We'll start with Angela. Angela, take it away.
Thank you so much, Rotunda, and thank you to the Harbor Area Links for inviting me to participate this evening and to join with Daryl Brown, who I consider a very good friend and colleague. We worked together during his time on the LA Urban League board. And so, Daryl, it's an absolute honor to serve with you. Applaud you, Harbor Area Links, for your community service and the work that you're doing to educate our community around issues associated with COVID-19 and other issues. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Rotunda, I'm going to say on the top end, I tend to be a little verbose, so if I go too long, just stop me. But what I wanted to do before, I'm talking about the employment and work side of what we face with COVID-19, and Daryl's addressing financial issues and economics and so forth. So I'll start. What I wanted to do, though, just to frame our discussion, is just to back up a little bit. And just remind us of how we all got here, because I don't know if how it feels for you, but for me, it feels like this has been going on for at least a year. But it's actually only been about 2 months since we in California have been quarantined. It'll be officially 2 months on May the 19th. And just to back up a little bit before then, it was December 31st, New Year's Day, that the Chinese doctor first appeared on TV and from his hospital bed saying, "Hey world, there's something really problematic taking place here. There's a virus and it's spreading and it's deadly." So that was December 31st, 2019. And then it took a couple of months for the world to really understand what was going on. It was on January 13th that we heard the first case reported outside of China in Thailand. And then January 20th, that the first case was reported in the US, in Washington State. And then January 30th, where the World Health Organization actually declared this a global public health emergency. And on February 11th, the World Health Organization went from calling it the coronavirus to officially naming it COVID-19. And so that's how we got the name that we have, COVID-19. And then March 11th, the World Health Organization declared this as a pandemic, which we all know the word pandemic means that certain health requirements go into play, certain financial support becomes available for different countries. And so there's significance in it being declared a pandemic. And then March 13th, just a couple of days after that, the US actually declared this a national emergency. And on March 19th, that's when California issued its lockdown and stay-at-home quarantine orders. So it feels like a year or more that we've been here, but it's been a short time, and clearly we have a ways to go to really getting a handle on this. As of today, what the statistics are showing is that over 30 million unemployment claims have been filed in the US, and a good part of those have been in California, nearing 3 million. We have over 1 million reported cases of infected persons, and over 50,000 in California that have been affected, and over 60,000 reported deaths in the US, and over 2,000 in California. So clearly this is very serious. And so when I talk about this, it's also important when I talk about the employment side of this is to kind of remind us of the framework where this fits in terms of our employment laws. So before COVID-19 and all the special laws that were created associated with it, we actually already had laws on the books that protected us in the event that we found ourselves seriously ill or needing to take time off for a medical issue or needing to take time off from work for anything. So under federal law, we have the Family Medical Leave Act, and that applies to individuals that work for employers that have 50 or more employees, and it provides up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave for individuals for their own serious medical condition or the serious medical condition of an immediate family member, such as a spouse, a child, or a parent. In California, I know this call is nationwide, but in California, we tend to have more extensive laws that complement the federal laws, and one of them is the California Family Rights Act, and that essentially is the equivalent of the Family Medical Leave Act, which provides an additional 4 weeks off on top of 12 weeks in terms of family medical leave for a serious medical condition. And we generally see those two laws play together when a woman takes off time for work due to being pregnant or for childbirth. And those two laws together is what generally gives a woman, and men actually, who take time off to bond with their children or to support their spouses in giving birth, up to 16 weeks of paid time off. And then in California, we also have the California Paid Sick Leave Act, which requires employers, no matter their size, to give part-time and full-time employees up to six sick days per year. And in California, we also have what's called the California Kin Care Law, which allows employees to take up to half of their own accrued sick time to care for an immediate family member. So that's important because when we look at this slide here, thank you, Rotunda, so much for preparing this slide. It merely adds to and complements what's already been on the books. So the first piece of advice I would give for anyone who themselves have tested positive for COVID or been ordered by their doctors to quarantine for any reason, whether it be for age or high susceptibility to the disease, or you are taking time off to care for a family member that has the disease, or you're being quarantined to protect family members, or now even to take care of your children because they're out of school and to help with their daily schoolwork. What the CARES Act does is it adds to the laws that have already been on the books for some time. The Family Medical Leave Act, the California Family Rights Act, the California Kin Care Law, and the California Paid Sick Leave Act. And other states may have equivalent laws such as those that we have in California. So what we get with the CARES Act in terms of paid sick leave, there are two types of added protections that we have. First is emergency paid sick leave, which was actually passed before the CARES Act was implemented through a federal bill called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, also known as the FFCRA. And that was the first bill that came out shortly after a national emergency was declared, where employees are entitled to up to 10 days of paid sick leave. That is a big difference between the laws that are on the books under federal law, such as FMLA, because those sick days are unpaid. But under the CARES Act in the FFCRA, you have up to 10 days of paid sick leave when you have an illness or you test positive for COVID-19. And with the paid sick leave, if you are a full-time employee, you will receive up to $511 a day, and to be capped over that 2-week period for a total of $5,111. And if you're part-time, you can receive pay up to $211 per day, to be capped at $2,000 over a 2-week time period. And employees are eligible for this type of paid sick leave regardless of how long they've worked for the employer. So I've heard a lot of situations where literally, California declared the quarantine on March 19th. Someone started work on March 20th. And they're, then they had to go into quarantine. And the question is whether that person is eligible for the paid sick leave under the CARES Act. And the answer is yes. Under traditional FMLA or California Family Rights Leave, you generally have to have been employed with your employer for at least a year before you qualify for those types of leaves. So the reason this is emergency because it applies to anyone across the board. Well, I should say it applies to employers who have 500 or fewer employees. Okay, so I'm not quite sure why they exempted larger employers of 500 or more, but these specific laws apply to employers with 500 or fewer employees. And if you're an employer with 50 or fewer employees, you can qualify for an exemption and possibly not have to comply with these laws. Then there's the extended family leave, which is basically an extension of the Family Medical Leave Act, which allows individuals to take time off to care for a family member, an immediate family member that may have tested positive for COVID or have COVID, and to take care of their children and to be home with their children due to school closures. That is not normally provided for in the Family Medical Leave Act. So the children taking time off because of school closures, that is an added part of this law. The first 10 days of this leave is unpaid, or you're eligible for a total of 12 weeks of leave, but the first 10 days are covered by the emergency paid sick leave, and then the remaining 10 weeks are covered by the extended family medical leave. Employees with this particular provision become eligible after working for the employer for 30 days. So in the first instance that I described, emergency paid sick leave, there's no time requirement in terms of how long you've worked for the employer. But in the second instances, you have to at least have been working for them at least 30 days as of the time that the quarantine laws took effect. Employers that are on the phone, there are new posters. All of you know you have to have posters describing the federal and state discrimination laws, wage and hour laws. There have been new posters created to add the additional protections under the CARES Act and the FFCRA. And the biggest thing that you should remember if you're an employer on the line is not to retaliate against individuals that have advised you that they are sick or tested positive or someone in their family member has. Your greatest duty is to make sure that you understand what the new laws provide. Look at your policies, look at the obligations even before these new laws, and try to act in compliance when responding to employees in individual situations. Okay, Rotunda, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so think of it in two buckets. So the first, at least as it relates to the employment issues, the first part of the CARES Act deals with expanded paid sick leave for yourself and for others in your family. The other part deals with providing additional benefits in terms of unemployment. So for individuals who find themselves laid off, are unemployed or furloughed, or even your hours have been reduced as a result of COVID-19, then you, under the CARES Act, are eligible to apply for your traditional unemployment benefits, whatever your state provides in terms of our state in California or other states provide for unemployment, but you're also allowed to apply for an added $600 a week benefit provided for under the CARES Act. And so let's say you're an employee in California and you qualify for the maximum California benefit, which I think is around $400. And then you also qualify for the additional $600 under the CARES Act. You could find yourself receiving upwards of $1,000 a week during this time of the COVID relief. And many employers are finding this somewhat challenging because as they're positioning themselves to bring employees back to work, many employees are saying they're not ready to come back to work because they're actually doing better on unemployment than they are doing, or than they might be doing with respect to their normal salaries from their employers. And that primarily would be someone who's making minimum wage or close to minimum wage that may be faring better on unemployment than they are when they go to work every day. this particular provision also applies to individuals who are independent contractors, or what we call gig economy workers. Traditionally, those individuals cannot apply for unemployment benefits through the state, but now with the CARES Act, they can apply for unemployment benefits. The problem that everyone, whether you be a traditional employee or independent contractor or gig economy worker, everyone has had problems getting through the EDD, not just in California, but in states across the country. Why is that the case? Is because these laws were passed so quickly, and many of the states did not have time to get their ducks in a row. The EDD offices did not have time to get their ducks in a row to comply with these new laws. So it's taken them some time to get the infrastructure in place, to get enough employees trained and available to assist individuals and to process these claims. Our state labor commissioner in California, as well as our governor, has been on the news regularly saying, we know, there's a problem, you can't get through, we're working on it. And for what I understand, more people have had success in this past week or two in getting through, whether they be traditionally unemployed or independent contractors. I know someone who's an independent contractor that sent me an email yesterday saying, I finally got through, but I think the reason I did is because I went on at 4 a.m. onto the site when no one else was on there. And so I think some people were having an experience with the site constantly crashing because so many people were trying to get on. So you may have to be creative and go, get up in the middle of the night, or just, sit at your computer all day and have the phone next to you and call and, try to log in at the same time. But these laws are in place, and they are intended to help supplement your income during this time. The other important thing about this, and then I can pass it to Daryl, is that the unemployment benefits apply retroactively from January 27th, and you can be eligible for up to 39 weeks total of unemployment benefits. So one of the questions I've gotten from people is they may have already been receiving unemployment benefits or have already exhausted their unemployment benefits. So this law allows you to apply for an additional 13 weeks of unemployment benefits to equal a total of 39 weeks. As a result of the CARES Act, and it applies through December 31st, 2020. And also just one last question in terms of people whose hours have been reduced, it also applies to you. So you may normally be a 40-hour-a-week employee, and your hours were reduced to 30 hours or 25 hours or less than that. You can apply for unemployment for the difference of the hours that you're not getting paid for. So this law, I think, is really great and has the right intent. The implementation of it has been quite challenging, but for those who can get through and can benefit from it, hopefully it's helping you to transition during this time. And that is a perfect segue, I think, to Daryl Brown, who's going to talk about finances and what to do and how to best manage your finances during this time.
Well, thank you very much, Angela. And good evening to everyone. I am really excited to have an opportunity. And first, let me just thank you, Angela. When I found out that you were going to be my co-panelist, I was overjoyed. So it's good to see you again, to partner with you. I wish we could be in the same room, but circumstances don't allow such. And let me also acknowledge you, Rotunda and Natalie, and all those behind the scenes. It's done an amazing job to put this seminar together, this webinar together. It is so needed, it's so timely. And overall, I want to acknowledge the links. I know the work that you do in the community. I know the impact that you have in our communities. You have redefined what it is to be a corporate citizen. You guys are true servants. And this call represents all of that. And I couldn't be more grateful to have an opportunity. And for all of you that have decided to say yes to this hour, we know that you could have taken this hour and done something a little bit different. So I think Angela and I both feel a responsibility to bring not only value to your time, but hopefully something that would disturb you to think a little bit different about how you look at financials, particularly as it relates to this current circumstance. So I'm going to talk about some truisms first, and I'll go into some of the slides. I was thinking the other day, it is without question the global nature of our society has completely changed. And I want you to think about that for a moment. It has changed. We know it. And so going from a platform that we are today, which could be uncertainty, doubt, fear, to crossing that bridge to acceptance can be short or long. I'm really concerned about it. And you can't have a solution without a problem. So today, my hope would be to provide some insight, some perspective, that will engage us to do things a little bit different as it relates to our personal finances. The government has put a plan together, provided some products, some services, and all those kinds of things. One of the primary reasons is, quite frankly, across the country, for people that you would never think, people have more month at the end of the money. And so when you start to think about what the plans the government has in place right now, it's allowing us to sort of have relief programs for individuals, relief programs for businesses, to sort of get us to move in the right direction. Here's another truism. Most people work harder on their jobs than they do on themselves. And now we're in this midst of cataclysmic event, crisis. And so I'm hopeful that when I get to the slides, beyond the slides, this will be a great hour. I'm really interested in what happens tomorrow. What are the things that you're going to do that will put you in a different position, become more aware, to be more informed beyond what's happening tonight? As I think about this call, and I think about the finances that we all have to deal with, the question is, do we have a budget? And if not, why not? And it's really important you start looking at your savings, start looking at how you spend money, how you pay your bills, how you invest. All those kinds of things are going to be critically important that we make it a priority. So we no longer just work hard on our jobs, which is critically important for those that have them. And most folks today are really challenged with how they close that gap. Another truism. Everybody on this call right now has a financial plan. Some of you might be scratching your head, I do. Yeah, everybody on this call has a financial plan. The question is it yours or is it the government's? And oftentimes, we depend on the government. And right now we have a plan with the government right now. And as we go to the slide, the government has done a lot to provide relief for individuals, for businesses. I'm going to slide a little bit more toward the individual. I may address some of the things as it relates to small business, but I'm really excited about it because we know that many people across this country have been negatively impacted as it relates to job, unemployment, all those kinds of things. Unemployment. I'm really excited that they look at unemployment, things can get modified. But in addition to, as you look at the slides, you can go to the slide and you look at the rebate payments, $1,200 for individuals, $2,400 for joint tax for married couples. But with unemployment, they expanded the eligibility to include those employees where there's an additional $600 per month. And I think that lasts for about 4 weeks, or 4 months rather. And I'm really excited they've done that, but it's also been an incentive, for folks, probably not to go to work and don't have a desire to go back to work. And we're hopeful that things are going to turn around for obvious reasons so people get employed and live the life that they so desire. Let's look at retirement programs. I'm clearly a baby boomer. And I was sort of pleased and excited. I'm in that age group where now I can take a withdrawal without a penalty. But you can see now you can take up to $50,000 to $100,000. I would encourage you to take it out as a loan, not always a withdrawal. I would ask you to consult with your financial consultant and spend some time to understand the tax benefits around it. But today you don't have to pay the 10% penalty for those of you that's under 59 and a half. The other thing I will say to this, for those of you that 401ks and approaching that age of 72, where you have required minimum distribution at the age of 72, it has been completely suspended. And that's something I'm really excited about. And again, I encourage all of you to spend time with your financial consultant. And on that note, I hope you go to, it's covid19.ca.gov for you to do some further analysis beyond the hour that we have here today. I'm going to give you some broad generalities, but there's some meaningful specifics that will help you think differently about the quality decisions that you have to make relative to your financials. So let's look at the next slide, please. Relief from renters. I'm excited about this. We've got rental that receives federal subsidies on property. And by the way, it's for properties that are owned by the FHA. Those individuals and those organizations and banks, those lenders that have more conventional lending structures might have some different strategies, some different programs where this is not applicable. So you want to make sure that when you go to your bank, be clear about what you want to accomplish. Be clear about the risks, the pros, the cons. Forbearance. Many folks might go in that direction. Some people are refinancing. Forbearance is an opportunity for some where you can pause that loan payment. You can delay it. But conventional loans have a way to do some different things. Where, as I said, refinance might be a choice, but that's costly. Or there might be an opportunity for those of you that have mortgages, to sort of negotiate with your bank. They're not interested in taking a home if there's a problem, if you're close to foreclosure, all those things. The banks, I understand it after 47 years, are very interested in working with you to find out, a structure that makes sense. So I'm really excited about that as it relates to your mortgages. As it looks for temporary moratorium and evictions, late fee for 120 days, beginning March 27th of this year, no notices to vacate. All those things are something that I'm excited about for those of you that are in that situation. But again, your consultants will provide you appropriate guidance. And the moratorium buys time, but it doesn't provide excuse for payment. So there's still going to be an opportunity to make principal reductions, be smart about how you use your dollars. Let me give you an example beyond what you see here on the screen. I was talking with someone the other day about their payments, about their mortgages, and I gave them an example. I'm curious to know, and we've talked about it, if you were to save $27 a day in discretionary spending, that would be equivalent to $10,000 a year. I want you to think about that for a moment. $10,000 a year. So it's just not the government's plan. It's also the plan that you have that's going to make a difference. What would you do with $10,000? Think about the expenditures that you have that automatically come out of your account that you don't see anymore and you don't use, whether it be magazines or subscriptions. I can tell you I used to drink something like Gatorade, $1.50 a bottle, 2 bottles a day. $3 is no problem. But 3 times 30 is $90 a month. 90 times 12 is over $1,000 a year. So as I look at all the things that we're faced with, I'm happy that we have relief programs. I'm happy that people are taking advantage of it. But at the end of the day, it's going to be incumbent upon you to make quality decisions that's aligned with your financial goals and your financial aspirations. Let's go to the next slide. Student loans. As you can see with the student loan payments suspended through September 2020. Certain payments of student loans on behalf of employers are excluded from taxable income. I'm really excited about it. I've worked for a company that did a lot with our employees. We provided student loans. We encourage education. And as a result, today's environment, they no longer have to have that as taxable income. And that's a big deal because education is going to be a continuing priority. As it relates to credit reporting, suspended for the loan payments will be treated on the credit report as if payments are made. I would encourage you, sign up for Equifax, TransUnion. You want to make real sure that what you read, what's being articulated in the media and the press, that you follow up. The banks didn't have the staff to do the things needed, to ramp up the kind of things needed to support all of you, whether it be the underwriting, mistakes are being made, but I can assure you they've got much better. So when it comes to credit reporting, delays in terms of your payment. All those things are going to be really important. Let me also say this: credit cards, car payments. Your banks are going to be very open to discussing some type of relief programs. Take advantage of them. Each issuer of credit cards and the kinds of things that are out there are going to make a major difference in you getting to a place that you're comfortable, that you're comfortable with your financial well-being. Small businesses. You may have heard of the small business paycheck PPP program, protection program. I'm really happy for those of you that happen to own a business. I hope that you got access to that. I know there's a few $1 billion that are still left. I would encourage all of you to apply. It's important that you're accurate, that you work very closely with your payroll software to make sure that things are aligned and that there's no disconnects. The banks have so many applications that if things are not aligned from a payroll perspective, it is likely to get kicked out. At the end of 8 weeks, it's important that those employees, that those dollars, when you receive those dollars from business owners, that they match. They can be used for payroll, 75%. We know there's a possibility of employees leaving, not coming back. And so there's some specific policies and details to make sure that that loan becomes a grant, because there can't be any disconnect between ensuring that you are aligned with all the compliance and regulatory areas that will support those of you that happen to have a small business. So again, I would encourage you to get involved with not only a financial planner, but to do a deep dive on the websites that exist. The other thing I'm going to be an advocate for: get your kids involved. I have to tell you that kids today don't understand what's going on, and they need to be involved in financials. I'm an old timer, but I really got my kids involved at a young age as a banker. Most of our kids don't know what we make. We don't know what our bills look like. And I'll just give you one situation with my kids. They're now 36 and 40. When they're 8 and 9 years old, I shared with them the utility bill. It was my light bill. It was $137. So I had a discussion with them, and I asked them this question: what do you think we need to do to lower this light bill? And they got it. They said, Dad, we need to cut off the lights. And I said to them, if we can lower this bill by whatever dollar amount, the difference I would add to your allowance. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you, every time I walked in the house, every light in the house was turned off. But they got it. And I would encourage all of you to spend time with your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, and make it a priority to understand how critically important it is for them today to understand what it is to save, to manage money, to invest, at least share with them the concepts, to make sure that they understand expenditures, to make sure they don't overdo it. And I would say to all of you, for all the monies that you receive, all the money that you save, start to just drill down and make sure that you have principal reduction on your credit, so you can move forward with the goals, the reasons, the purpose that is a priority to all of you. So with that, I want to respect time. This could be a topic that we can go on for hours, and this is a quick and dirty, a broad generality, and I really wish I'd have more time to give you some meaningful specifics, but I'm really excited to share a few things with you that might engage your interest to do something a little bit different. What you see now on the screen is the resources that are available to you. These are not only from the various departments, whether it be the resources that Angela spoke to, whether it be some of the financial literacy education. The website is full of them. I would encourage all of you to take advantage of that. Make yourself a priority. Work harder on yourself. Make yourself a priority. And I think together we'll make things happen, and we'll get past this virus and other things that's handcuffing our ability to do things differently. Oh, sorry for that. So anyway, I'm very interested in questions.
Daryl, thank you very much. Angela, thank you very much. You both shared some wonderful nuggets here tonight, and I think many of us will walk away better for it. So I do appreciate both of your presentations and the information that you shared. I think now would be a great time to move into our Q&A session. Speaking of, I do happen to have a question. Daryl, you were sharing some information about foreclosures, and it looks like we do have a follow-up question on that topic. One of our attendees wants to know if you could speak on the future of foreclosures, forbearances, short sales, and how homeowners can protect themselves today.
It's a great question. I will tell you that I've been around long enough in the industry to know that, particularly 10 years ago, that banks, particularly with guidance from regulatory compliance, to be real judicious about them moving forward on a foreclosure. And for a lot of reasons. The banks aren't interested in taking back the property. You know, that's not what they want to do. They want people to honor the obligation. I think banks recognize they can't live an environment of free, you know, but they understand that things change. So I think you're going to see a lot of things happen as it relates to how they look at a foreclosure. And I think you're going to see a lot of predictive modeling, artificial intelligence that's going to work with you to understand exactly where you are relative to your ability to honor the obligation. They're going to put more emphasis on stability, your stability as someone that honored obligation across your credit platform and portfolio. They're going to look at your ability to honor that obligation, what period of time it might take before you secure another job. They also are going to look at your willingness to pay, which might speak to some of your credit history, you know, and where you spend your money. So it's not just frivolous. So you're going to see the banks take more of a certified financial planning perspective to working with you, you know, to make sure that there can be a way that you can honor the obligation. Also, they're looking to do refinance. They've explored the possibility of 40-year loans. But again, very highly regulated sort of underwriting criteria as it relates to that. The banks do not, after 10 years ago, want to go back and take anyone's home. Does anyone on this call expect it to be free? No. I'm not in that camp. You know, I've been a banker for a long period of time. There are folks out there that have made decisions to go in a different direction. But I think that in today's environment, if you can find a way to sort of work with the banks or work with your lenders, it's going to be important. Let me also say this. Every bank, big banks, small banks, brokers, they all have different criteria. So let me be real clear. What I share with you is, again, a broad generality, because some banks will not portfolio loan, meaning they won't keep the loan on their books. They will sell the loan. So you want to make sure that when they sell a loan, that you follow that loan. You want to find out if they have a willingness to work with you, to find out to what extent. You know, all those things are going to be really important to prevent, you know, foreclosure from happening. So you're going to see a lot more forbearance. I think whether it's pausing, whether it's make a smaller payment. When you make a smaller payment, that means principal is going to get higher. The way they calculate the interest is going to be a bigger interest cost over a longer period of time. I don't want to get into the weeds, but I think the banks are going to have a greater willingness to sort of work with anyone that's in a situation that's at risk of their homes being foreclosed on.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that analysis and insight into forbearances. We really appreciate that. So Angela, we have a question for you next. This question is unemployment taxable money? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Actually don't know the answer to that question. Daryl, do you know if unemployment is taxable?
It's income. It is taxable. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Gosh, well, Angela, I think we have another question for you.
Okay.
If there is an employee who is not sick with COVID-19, but they are unafraid to enter the workplace when it's time to reopen and it's time to return to work, what are the protections that they might have if they simply have fears for their own personal safety?
Yeah. So I actually advised someone on this, a very similar question earlier this week. And unfortunately, what it rests on whether the government, whether the state, the county, the city have lifted the quarantine rules. So once the state officially lifts the quarantine rules, or the county or city does, then every employer that opens back up their doors and invites employees back to work, those employees have a responsibility to go back. And there's no duty of the employer to provide additional time off unless you can connect it to one of those categories that I spoke about: your own serious illness, the serious illness of an immediate family member, one of your sick days, one of your kin care days, something like that. But it can't just be, I'm fearful of going back to work. Now, once you go back to work, and if you see that your employer is not honoring social distancing requirements or other requirements that are recommended by the CDC and our government in terms of returning folks back to work, then that in and of itself may create a reason to go out, for example, on workers' compensation, or to make a complaint with OSHA or what have you. But there's no automatic right to not go back to work out of fear, unfortunately.
Got it. Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Thank you.
Gosh, it looks like we have lots of questions here, Angela and Daryl. These are very popular topics.
Yeah.
So next we have, okay. Can you please clarify what homeowners need to know before asking their mortgage payments to be delayed? Specifically, who qualifies, what are the pros and cons, and what will the payback look like since it's a delay, not a grant? Daryl, that's for you.
Yeah, so the underwriting and how they're going to approach it is going to be unique to your circumstance. Banks traditionally are income credit lenders, and so versus an asset-based lender. And so they're looking at ways in which they can look at the equity in your home, as a way to protect, the risk, for non-payment. So there's some different things going on in that particular environment. It's unique to you. It could be a decrease in a payment. It could be a delay in the payment. You can negotiate to some extent, whatever you don't pay is put on the back end of that loan based on your term, or you can start to negotiate at a date specific based on unique circumstances where you can start to make principal reductions. I mean, the landscape really is moving around because this is relatively new. And each bank is beginning to work together, find out ways that they can accommodate the customer and their uniqueness. If there is a history, of non-payment and you're on the verge of foreclosure, even still, the banks will work with you to find out exactly what are the things they can do to decrease your monthly payment. If they refinance and it's interest only, your payment is going to drop. But again, your principal is going to be the same. That means there's not going to be any principal reduction. And if you keep that home for whatever your term's over 30 years, you're going to have a really big payment over that period of time. But the banks understand that. Remember, it's going to be your income, your credit, your unique circumstances. And so there's not one cookie cut template approach to it any longer. I think banks have recognized that we've had to have some fluidity and making sure that we adapt to your unique circumstances, but there's a willingness. I wish I could be more specific, because, each bank that I talk to, I came at US Bank and they're looking at doing some different things, but all the banks also want to have some competitive edge. And they also want to be a good corporate citizen where they don't do something that's not in the best interest of society for something that's not in their control. They'd rather you stay in your home. They understand bare necessity, food, clothing, and shelter. And they will do anything that's possible, that's reasonable, before they move forward with foreclosure. And they're willing to delay that accordingly.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Daryl. Angela, this question is for you. Isn't that discrimination if the employer handpicks people? Now, I'm assuming that question is referring to returning back to work. if they're handpicking certain employees versus the full complement of employees that initially were hired?
Yes, well, it can be. And so that's why employers and any employers on this call, my biggest piece of guidance to you is don't use COVID-19 or any issue as a reason not to follow normal employment laws and protocols. So in normal situations, when we hire, fire, or discipline, we are supposed to do it based on non-discriminatory factors. So in returning people to work, while we are at will state in California and many other states are at will, and employers have the right to make those kind of determinations, they want to make sure they're not doing it based on someone's race, their gender, their disability, or the perception that they have continuing issues related to COVID or anything like that. You really want to be fair in terms of how you bring people back to work. So if you are a banker, Mr. Brown. And so maybe the first two, well, banks have been in business, but like maybe the first group of people they bring back are the tellers because they need the tellers because the bank lines are going to be really long. So that's a justifiable business reason to bring back only tellers, say, versus, someone behind the scenes that's maybe not playing as critical of a role. So you want to look at your business and tie the reasons that you bring people back to legitimate business reasons. And that actually allows me to quickly comment on the city of LA and the county of LA. Both have passed their own local ordinances, which require employers that do business in the city or the county to give employees that were laid off the first right of refusal to come back. Meaning that whatever jobs you have open, you have to make those jobs available to the people that you already laid off, assuming those individuals are qualified for the positions. And if you have to make a selection as to who you bring back, you first have to start with seniority. And the idea is and this, by the way, is for employers that made $5 million or more last year. And so the reason they're looking at seniority-based returns is because they don't want employers to use this as an opportunity to lay off and to terminate older workers. So you got to follow the law, probably is the biggest question. So if it's confusing or not sure, then make sure you consult with someone who can guide you through that.
Yeah, let me just add to that, being an employer, having dealt with many attorneys, I'm not sure, Angela, you and I have ever had to go up against each other, thank God. But a lot of companies are looking for ways that we can retain and retrain employees for new opportunities. We're beginning to recognize that your skill sets are transferable to other job opportunities. Some of those jobs are going to disappear. Some of those jobs are already being teed up to disappear. Now you've got an environment today where, the companies in these high-rise downtown, do they need the square footage? So you're seeing a transition to employees going elsewhere based on where they might have an operating system or area operations versus another group, another department. So there's going to be a desire and a hope that employees will have some willingness to move to other opportunities based on further development.
Thank you so much for that. So I do have a question for you, Daryl. This question is in regards to investments. In light of COVID-19, is this now a good time to invest in stocks? And also in terms of long-term strategies, would it be appropriate right now to perhaps take money out of the stock market and invest in other markets such as the real estate market?
Well, I'm not an investment advisor, so I've got an attorney here right quick, so I have to take note of this. There's so many different options, that people have, but traditionally, I will say, generally speaking, as it relates to the market or how you define financial success, is buy low, sell high, collect early, pay late. I think people look at those kind of parameters, that speak to a lot of different things. The market is going to shift. It's not just buying low. It's the way the market is shifting. I can tell you that people that were manufacturing webcams, their stock price is going up. because, people are buying webcams because we have to do more of this. People are Zooming a little bit more. The baby boomer generation is open now to change. Companies like Zelle, where you can move money that without having to go into a branch. The digital world, there are mirrors today that can assess the quality of your pores and determine the quality of your health. You'll have chips in your shoes. The dolls that your kids play with have a chip that can capture the conversation, go up to the cloud, and report back to you, the parent. Those programs, and I'm not sure I like that one, but because of privacy issues, but the point is, it's incumbent upon you to do your research. Think about what's happening in a day's environment. Doctors are going to electronic, doctor reviews. Blood pressure machines are going up, the basics that we can acquire. So I always tell people, invest what you're comfortable with, do your research, identify a company that you're comfortable with, make sure you engage some trust. It could be a CFP, it could be a financial coach, it could be a bank, it could be a securities, it could be insurance. All those things are going to be really important for you. But at the end of the day, the basics are the same. Get out of debt as best you can. Lower it. Take the savings and pay off another bill. Make yourself a bill. As I said earlier, most people work hard at jobs and do it themselves. Take your name and put INC behind it and make yourself a priority. But whether it be savings, whether it be real estate, some markets, the price is going to go up. The average rent today is $3,000 in LA today. It might go down a little bit, which means you have to earn about $75,000, to afford the average rent. So what are people doing? They're not buying cars. They don't need a car, they need transportation. So people are looking at things that begin to be open to public transportation. So if you live in a city like Los Angeles, then and very costly, high cost, then you're looking at some things a little bit different. But I would encourage you first to start with a budget, categorize those budgets, to work with a software, align it with your goals, and then the reasons and the purpose behind those goals, because the purpose behind the goal is stronger than the goal itself. Those are some behavioral tidbits, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to those kinds of things. Either or. I've been invested in both. I tend to be heavily invested in the market. I won't tell you what the results have been over the last couple of months, so my advice might be the best advice, but I'm somewhat of someone that balances it. And I think you need to talk to a consultant to get something more specific.
Thank you so much for that, Daryl. I really appreciate your insights. And I'd have to just stop at this time because we are almost at the top of the hour. We have run out of time for questions. For those of you attendees who may have had some additional questions that we didn't get to tonight, I'd say to you that we have them in queue. We can respond to you via email and get those answers out to you. Secondly, if there are others that might have questions, we do have our social media platforms that you can follow, and certainly pose those questions to us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram and Twitter. And so with that being said, I certainly would like to take the moment now to acknowledge our esteemed panelists, Angela Reddick-Wright and Mr. Daryl Brown, who have both come to the table tonight with some excellent tidbits of information. Angela was so kind in sharing all of her wealth of knowledge regarding employment law and letting us know about the benefits that are available to us for paid sick leave and unemployment. She certainly took us back because she was so right in stating that, it feels like this pandemic has been around for a year when in fact it's only been a few months. And she took us back to when it first started back in December of 2019 to bring things full circle for us. So thank you very much, Angela, for that.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And Daryl, with your wealth of knowledge in the finance world, you have shared some truisms with us, right? And you talked about taking personal accountability which is really, really important, not only in the climate of a pandemic like we're facing now, but just in general. We should take that personal accountability and get a budget so that we don't have to rely on the government. So thank you for sharing your many tidbits of wisdom. You've given us so much to walk away and think about that, you know, we might need another session, maybe on small business or something. But it's been excellent hearing from both of you tonight. We really appreciate your time. And before we end tonight, I would also like to acknowledge Ms. Natalie Nathal. She is the Emergency Response Committee Chair. This was an ad hoc committee that came about purely because of COVID-19. So Natalie, thank you so very much for your leadership in bringing us to the point where we are today, where we have a series, a 4-part series that we're bringing to the public. And I'd also like to mention Valerie Green Amos. She is the Links Harbor Area Chapter President. So I'm sure she is on the line, and she has led us to where we are today with the Harbor Area Chapter, and we thrive because of Valerie. So thank you very much for your leadership. And with that being said, that takes me to my next point, which is we do have this 4-part series, and the next series will happen next Wednesday, May 20th at 7 p.m. COVID-19 Fact versus Fiction. It will be moderated by Natalie Nathal, and we'll have 2 featured members from our chapter, Valerie Green Amos and Marion Thornton. Valerie is a physician in LA, and Marion is a nurse. So we will have those experts to share details about what is fact versus what is fiction. So we very much look forward to that. And if you haven't signed up, attendees, please, please, please go to our website and go to our social media pages and sign up today. I think that covers all of the acknowledgements. So at this